Imagine stepping way back in time, billions of years. You see maybe a tiny speck of green life, not quite plant, not quite algae, just taking its first, tentative steps out of the water onto bare land.
Hmm.
Then, maybe fast forward, hear that almost imperceptible buzz. A mosquito. An organism still thriving, adapting everywhere, despite everything we throw at it.
Right.
Just pause for a second and think about that incredible, relentless journey of life on Earth. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going on, well, an epic journey, tracing the intricate threads of evolution that connect literally every living thing.
It's a massive web.
Totally. From those ancient plants, the smallest, fastest evolving viruses, and yeah, even ourselves, our complex selves. We're going to unpack how life adapts, survives, sometimes struggles in a world that just never stops changing.
It's a really fascinating way to look at our planet. We often think of evolution as this incredibly slow sort of geological process.
Yeah, it takes millions of years, right?
Yeah, that's the perception. But what our sources reveal is just how dynamic it can be.
Oh,
And surprisingly rapid adaptation across different species. That absolutely includes us.
okay.
So this deep dive will use your articles to explore the varied ways life forms respond, from, say, early seed plants to these highly adaptable viruses. And crucially, what does this all tell us about our own evolutionary path and the challenges we still face?
Right. So our mission today, explore those different speeds of evolution, understand why some challenges like mosquitoes and the diseases they carry just stick around despite all our human intelligence.
Yeah, why haven't we solved that one?
Exactly. And maybe even glimpse what our own future adaptations might look like. So buckle up. Let's unpack this. We should probably start way, way back with one of the biggest leaps in life's history, the first steps onto land.
Absolutely fundamental.
It seems basic now, but that journey, plants moving from water to dry land, it involves some truly radical, world-changing adaptations.
Indeed. I mean, think about it. A purely aquatic organism suddenly needing to survive. Well, out of the water.
A huge hurdle.
Massive.
Yeah.
So the immediate ancestors were likely green algae. But for their descendants to really prosper on land, they basically had to invent a whole new toolkit.
Okay, like what?
Well, crucial things like a waxy cuticle, an epidermis, basically ways to stop drying out.
Right, like a protective coating.
Exactly. And stomogenids tiny pores, essentially for gas exchange with the air. They needed to breathe air, not water.
Got it.
Plus specialized structures for absorbing nutrients from the soil and spores that could be carried by wind, not just water.
Ah, so cutting the cord with water for dispersal?
Totally. These weren't just minor tweaks, they were fundamental breakthroughs. They literally changed the terrestrial environment.
And then came the real game changers, right? Things like seeds and pollen. Our sources talk about these as incredible innovations. What made them so revolutionary?
Absolutely. The ovule, first think of it as a protected little house for the female reproductive part, the bit that makes an egg.
Okay.
After fertilization, that develops into a seed, which gives protection and food to the baby plant, the embryo.
A packed lunch, basically.
Sort of, yeah. But the real mic drop moment for getting away from water dependence, pollen.
Right.
Imagine this tiny male gametophyte packed in a tough little capsule. It lets sperm travel through the air. No more needing that film of water for fertilization.
That's huge.
It really was. That single innovation finally freed plants from needing moisture to reproduce. It let them colonize pretty much everywhere.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. It wasn't just wind blowing pollen around, which sounds a bit hit and miss.
Can be, yeah.
Plants also evolved these amazing traits to actually attract animal pollinators like bees to carry pollen directly plant to plant.
Right, targeted delivery.
Yeah. Which must have significantly boosted their chances of fertilization. It's like they hired a courier service for their genes.
Yeah.
This is coevolution, right? They're evolving together.
Exactly. That coevolutionary dance, as you put it, is such a powerful engine of adaptation. It creates these intricate links that shape whole ecosystems. It's not just one species changing in isolation. It's two or more evolving in response to each other. And we see diversification driven by the environment, too.
Yeah.
Like mosses, non-vascular plants, they really diversified during warm, wet periods in the early Cenozoic.
So climate plays a big role.
Definitely. It shows that even for these, quote, simpler life forms, the right environmental conditions can lead to an explosion of new species. These early plant adaptations, they didn't just let plants survive on land, they transformed the whole planet, creating the oxygen, the soils, the habitats that allowed complex animals, like us, to eventually show up.
Wow. Okay, so moving from those ancient world shapers,
hmm
let's dive into some of the fastest evolving organisms. Insects first. They are literally everywhere, even the harshest places. How on earth do they do that?
Insects show truly remarkable adaptability. Just look at cold climates. Many survive winter using amazing strategies, hibernation obviously,
Sure.
but some actually produce natural antifreeze proteins in their bodies to stop ice forming inside
That's
them.
basically anti.
Yep. Others can supercool their body fluids, keeping them liquid well below freezing point. And some, this is incredible, can actually be frozen solid and then just revive later.
Okay, that is sci-fi stuff. Frozen solid and revived. Makes you wonder if we could ever learn from that for, say, medicine or...
Oh, biomimicry potential is definitely there.
Yeah.
People are looking into it. That's fascinating. But thinking about their journeys, what about migration? Some insects travel huge distances.
Thousands of miles sometimes. How do they fuel that?
Well, for those long hauls, migratory insects like locusts or tobacco armyworms, they rely on a specific class of neuropeptides. They're called adipokinetic hormones, AKH for short.
AKH. Okay.
Think of AKH like a turbo boost switch.
Yeah.
These hormones signal their fat bodies to rapidly release stored fats and sugars for energy.
So it's like tapping into their fuel reserves on demand.
Exactly. It's a crucial physiological adaptation for that kind of sustained marathon flight. They couldn't do it otherwise.
So insects are amazing natural adapters, tuned to their environment. But what happens when we become a major part of that environment? With all the changes we make, the sources mention rapid evolution in response to anthropogenic environmental shifts.
That's right. And it's happening fast. Insects show incredibly swift genomic responses to human pressures. Things like pollution, pesticides, deforestation.
So not slow, gradual changes.
No, sometimes surprisingly quick.
Yeah.
These adaptations can involve different genetic mechanisms. Sometimes it's a change in a single gene. Other times it's polygenic, lots of genes shifting together.
Yeah.
We even see big structural changes in chromosomes or introgression.
Introgression, what's that?
That's when genes move between different species through hybridization, basically borrowing genetic tricks from relatives.
Wow. So this does raise a big question. Are we unintentionally speeding up their evolution, creating superbugs that are harder to deal with?
This is a very real possibility, yes.
Yeah.
We're applying intense selection pressure and they're responding genetically.
Speaking of rapid evolution, viruses, they seem to evolve at, well, lightning speed, constantly throwing new challenges our way. SARS-CoV-2 is the obvious recent example.
It is. And what's fascinating is scientifically is that while evolution is usually slow for us, for cellular life, RNA viruses like coronaviruses, they let us watch key evolutionary mechanisms happening almost in real time.
How do they do it so fast?
Their plasticity. It's driven by high rates of genetic recombination, mixing bits of their genome and mutation.
Yeah.
This pumps up their genetic variability incredibly quickly.
Some more options to try out.
Exactly. It lets them rapidly explore new niches, dodge our defenses, adapt to changing conditions on a really compressed timescale.
So when we see new variants emerging all the time, like Omicron and its subvariants, that's not just random chance. It's directed adaptation.
It's highly efficient natural selection in action. Omicron, for instance, rapidly evolved to be more transmissible. Interestingly, its adaptation to us also seemed to lead to, generally, less severe disease compared to earlier variants. And it's not just about disease. Viruses are actually a major driver of protein evolution in mammals. They constantly force our immune systems to evolve new defenses just to keep up.
An arms race.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And viruses have their own tricks, too. They employ sophisticated ways to evade our immune systems, blocking key alarm signals like interferon, or messing with how our infected cells present viral pieces to the immune system, the MHC class I pathway.
Right.
It's this constant, high-stakes biological back and forth.
Okay, let's turn the mirror on ourselves now. Humans. Homo sapiens. We pride ourselves on our intelligence, our technology, how we shape the world. But where do we fit in this grand evolutionary race? Are we adapting quickly enough?
Well, our evolutionary story is quite distinct. There's this idea called the variability selection hypothesis.
Okay.
It suggests that human evolution wasn't primarily driven by adapting to one specific stable environment. Instead, it was driven by instability, by constant environmental change.
So we adapted to change itself.
Precisely. Our ancestors, in the genus Homo, got better and better at coping with shifting habitats, rather than becoming hyper-specialized for just one. And that general adaptability, that flexibility, is likely what allowed Homo sapiens to spread across the entire globe.
Unlike, say, Neanderthals.
Unlike Neanderthals, who, despite their own adaptations, were perhaps more specialized and eventually went extinct, our adaptability was, arguably, our edge.
Okay, let's unpack that. So our success wasn't just bigger brains, it was this knack for dealing with constant change. What are some recent human adaptations, stuff happening, say, in the last few tens of thousands of years?
Oh, there are definitely clear examples. Over the past 40,000 years, we see significant adaptations. Lactase persistence is a classic one.
Right, digesting milk as adults.
Exactly. That evolved independently in several populations with a history of dairy farming, a huge nutritional advantage. We've also adapted to high-altitude environments.
Like in the Andes or
Exactly.
Tibet.
Yes, developing unique physiological traits to cope with low oxygen. And we see strong genetic signals of recent positive selection for that. Even, interestingly, epigenetic signals.
Epigenetics. That sounds complicated. Can you break that down? What does that mean for adaptation?
Sure. Think of your DNA sequence, your genes, as the basic cookbook. Epigenetics is like sticky notes or highlighter marks on that cookbook. They don't change the actual recipes, the DNA sequence itself,
Okay.
but they influence how and when those recipes are used, which genes are turned on or off or dialed up or down. And these epigenetic marks can be influenced by the environment, diet, stress, toxins.
And these marks can be passed on?
Some potentially can, yes, for a generation or two without altering the underlying DNA. So it's like a faster, more flexible layer of adaptation, a way for our bodies to respond more quickly to environmental cues than waiting for DNA mutations.
Wow. So our bodies are still actively changing based on what we eat, where we live, the air we breathe.
Absolutely. Our biology is still very much in conversation with our environment.
Which brings me back to mosquitoes. For all our intelligence, our adaptability, why are we still locked in this seemingly endless battle? Why haven't we just eradicated malaria or the mosquitoes that carry it?
It really highlights the incredible complexity of these co-evolutionary arms races. Malaria has exerted immense pressure on us throughout history, huge burdens of sickness and death.
And we have evolved defenses.
We have. Humans have evolved various genetic resistance mechanisms. Sickle cell trait is the famous one, being a heterozygote carrying one copy of the gene, gives significant protection against severe malaria.
Right.
We also see protective variants related to alpha and beta thalassemia, G6PD deficiency, Duffy negativity,
Yeah.
all linked to malaria resistance. But here's the catch. None offer universal protection. And their benefit really depends on where you are, how intense malaria transmission is. It's a patchwork defense, not a perfect shield.
And meanwhile, the mosquitoes are evolving right back at us against our interventions. It feels like we're always one step behind.
That's exactly what's happening. Mosquitoes develop insecticide resistance incredibly quickly, and they do it through multiple mechanisms, often at the same time.
Like how?
Well, they can develop mutations in the target sites of the insecticides, like in their nerve receptors. The KDR gene mutations make them less sensitive to DDT and pyrethroids. The ACE1R mutation helps against organophosphates.
So the insecticide just doesn't work as well.
Right. But they also ramp up their detoxification systems. They produce more enzymes that literally break down the insecticide before it can harm them.
The double whammy.
Exactly. And this often leads to cross-resistance, where resistance to one type of insecticide makes them resistant to others too, even ones they haven't been exposed to much.
So the early successes, like with DDT,
Ultimately led to widespread resistance. It forced a major strategy shift in the mid-20th century, from trying to eradicate malaria globally to just trying to control it. We're constantly needing new tools because the mosquitoes keep adapting to the old ones.
Okay, given that resistance treadmill, what about genetically modifying the mosquitoes themselves? That sounds like a potential game changer, like something out of science fiction.
It does, and scientists are definitely working hard on it. Genetically modified mosquitoes, GMMs. The idea is to reduce disease transmission.
How would that work?
Different approaches. Some aim to release males whose offspring won't survive. Others aim to create mosquitoes that are genetically resistant to carrying the malaria parasite or dengue virus or Zika.
But it sounds like there are concerns.
Significant concerns, yes. There's potential for unintended consequences. For instance, if antibiotic resistance genes are used as markers in the genetic modification process, could those potentially transfer?
Okay.
There's also the ecological question. If you suppress one mosquito species, like Aedes aegypti, will another, maybe Aedes albopictus, just move in and take over that niche, possibly still transmitting disease?
Right, you create a vacuum.
Potentially. And then there are big biosafety and ethical concerns, especially around something called gene drive technologies.
Gene drive, you mentioned that. What exactly is that, and why is it controversial?
That's a key point. A gene drive is a genetic engineering technique designed to make a specific gene spread through a population much faster than normal inheritance rules would allow.
How does it do that?
Essentially, it ensures that almost all offspring inherit the modified gene, not just 50% like usual. It kind of cheats Mendelian genetics. The goal is to quickly change the entire population, maybe make them all sterile or all unable to carry a pathogen.
That sounds incredibly powerful.
It is, and that's why it raises concerns. What if it escapes the target population? Could it spread globally? Could it jump to other species? What are the long-term ecological impacts of driving a specific gene or even a species to extinction? These are huge unknowns.
Serious questions. So it's not as simple as just eliminating the bad mosquitoes. Are they even important ecologically? Could we get rid of, say, the main malaria carriers without messing up the whole ecosystem?
That's another complex layer. Some ecological studies, specifically looking at Anopheles gambiae, the big malaria vector in Africa, suggest they might actually play a fairly marginal role in their ecosystems.
Oh, really? That's encouraging, maybe.
It is somewhat for targeted interventions. If removing them doesn't cause a huge ripple effect, a trophic cascade, that makes certain strategies seem less risky ecologically. However, modeling the whole system, human, mosquito vector, pathogen, is way more complex than typical two-species predator-prey models.
I can imagine.
And beyond the ecology, there's still the fundamental ethical debate about deliberately eradicating an entire species, even one that causes so much human suffering, even if ecological role seems minor.
So wrapping this all together, what does it mean for our future adaptations? Will we continue to adapt biologically, physiologically, or is it more about technology and culture taking the lead now?
We are definitely still seeing ongoing physiological adaptations. Things related to diet, for instance, like genes involved in processing fatty acids. The FADS gene seem to be under selection as human diets continue to shift globally.
So biology is still ticking along.
It is. But increasingly, cultural adaptation is recognized as a vital and often much faster component of how we respond. Our sources talk about cultural memory, the knowledge, the practices, the technologies we pass down non-genetically,
Okay.
and rapid innovation. These cultural tools can actually buffer populations from environmental shocks. It can allow for what's called cultural rescue, maintaining population numbers even when the environment changes rapidly. This might even slow down the pace of genetic evolution because the immediate survival pressure is lessened by our cultural adaptations.
Interesting. So culture can buy genetics time.
In a way, yes. But when you hear ideas about, say, genetically enhancing humans for complex traits like musical talent or intelligence, well, there's a lot of skepticism.
Why is that?
Because those kinds of traits are highly polygenic. They don't involve just one or two genes. We're talking potentially tens of thousands of genes interacting in incredibly complex networks with each other and the environment. It's not like flipping a single switch.
Right. Much more complicated than fixing a single gene disorder.
Exactly. So it really seems it's not just about what's coded in our DNA, but also very much about what's in our collective minds, our societies, our traditions, and how we choose to adapt using our culture and technology. It's this dynamic interplay.
This deep dive has really painted an incredible picture. Life's adaptability, from the tiniest virus evolving in real time to the massive planetary changes driven by early plants, and our own ongoing story, adapting both genetically and culturally.
It absolutely underscores that adaptation isn't some finished chapter for any species, especially not for humans. We're constantly in this dynamic conversation with our environment, with other species, always evolving, always responding.
Thinking about that complex dance, especially those ongoing battles with things like mosquitoes and viruses that adapt so quickly, and our own pace of genetic change, which is remarkable but sometimes feels slow in comparison.
It really brings up a crucial question for you, for all of us listening. Given the accelerating pace of change, environmental, biological challenges, how should Homo sapiens best use our unique toolkit, this capacity for both genetic and cultural adaptation? How do we thrive in the centuries, the millennia to come? Is it more about understanding our subtle biological shifts? Or is it really about consciously shaping our cultural responses, our technologies, our societies? Where should we focus our efforts?